The stage lights dimmed at Philadelphia's Wells Fargo Center as thousands held their breath. Andrea Bocelli, the man whose voice had moved mountains and melted hearts for 3 decades, walked slowly to the microphone. But instead of the soaring notes fans expected, he delivered words that sent shockwaves through the arena. "I cannot sing tonight." The voice that had conquered the world was gone, silenced by what he would later call a devious virus that nearly ended his legendary career. What happened in those dark months of 2023 revealed the fragility behind the world's most powerful voice and exposed secrets about Bocelli's life that fans never knew existed. December 2023 should have been a triumph. Andrea Bocelli's winter tour was selling out arenas across America. His voice is magnificent as ever at 65. Then, everything collapsed. Boston's TD Garden first, then Philadelphia, Baltimore, Hartford. One by one, the cancellations came. But this wasn't just a typical illness. Doctors warned him it could be dangerous to continue singing. For a man who had never missed a show in 30 years, this was devastating. The scenes at these venues were heartbreaking. In Philadelphia, Bocelli appeared on stage looking frail and defeated. He sat at a keyboard while his 11-year-old daughter Virginia sang in his place, her small voice carrying the weight of her father's legacy. Fans wept, not from his usual emotional performances, but from witnessing a giant brought to his knees. Some demanded refunds, angry at the last-minute changes. Others stood and applauded, understanding they were witnessing something historically tragic. Behind closed doors, the situation was even more terrifying. Bocelli later revealed that the virus attacked his vocal cords with unprecedented viciousness. "This is something that has never happened to me in my 30-year career," he confessed on Instagram. The man who had sung through personal tragedies, family breakups, and global pandemics was finally silenced. His team remained tight-lipped, but whispers spread through the music industry about whether the tenor's golden era was over. But what fans didn't realize was that this health crisis was just the latest chapter in a life that had been defined by battling against impossible odds. The voice they thought they knew had been forged in darkness, shaped by an accident so brutal it should have ended his dreams before they began. September 1970. A typical afternoon in rural Tuscany turned into the nightmare that would define Andrea Bocelli's entire existence. At just 12 years old, he was already struggling with congenital glaucoma, his vision limited to shadows and blurred shapes. But like any boy his age, he loved playing soccer with his friends in the dusty fields near his family's farm. The ball came flying toward him faster than expected. In that split second, everything changed. The impact triggered a massive brain hemorrhage that would steal the last remnants of his sight forever. But the medical response was even more horrifying than the accident itself. In a desperate attempt to save his vision, doctors resorted to medieval practices, applying leeches to his damaged eyes. The grotesque treatment failed spectacularly, leaving young Andrea in total darkness. Most children would have been destroyed by such trauma. The psychological impact of losing sight at such a crucial age, combined with the physical agony of the treatments, should have broken him. His parents, Alessandro and Edie, watched helplessly as their son disappeared into a world they couldn't enter. The farmhouse that had once echoed with a child's laughter fell silent. Yet, in that silence, something miraculous began to emerge. Unable to rely on sight, Andrea's hearing became supernaturally acute. He could distinguish between different birds by their songs, identify family members by their footsteps, and most importantly, hear musical nuances that sighted people missed entirely. The accident that stole his eyes had gifted him something far more valuable, a connection to sound that was almost divine. His first encounter with Franco Corelli's voice on a scratchy radio recording became his lifeline. The legendary tenor's powerful notes cut through Andrea's darkness like a sword of light. For the first time since the accident, the boy felt hope. If someone could create such beauty with just their voice, maybe darkness wasn't the end of the world. Maybe it was the beginning of something extraordinary. By the 1980s, Andrea Bocelli was living a lie that would have destroyed most people. To his law professors at the University of Pisa, he was a brilliant but blind student who recorded lectures on cassette tapes and memorized legal codes with photographic precision. His academic performance was flawless, his future as a lawyer seemingly guaranteed. But when the sun set over Tuscany, Andrea transformed into someone entirely different. The smoky piano bars of Pisa became his secret training ground. Night after night, he would stumble through clouds of cigarette smoke and the chatter of drunk patrons to reach battered pianos in cramped venues. The audiences were brutal, talking through performances, ignoring the music, treating him like background noise. But these hostile crowds became his greatest teachers, forcing him to develop the power and presence that would later fill stadiums. The money was terrible, barely enough to supplement his meager student budget. Some nights he earned less than a restaurant dishwasher. But for Andrea, these performances weren't about money. They were about survival. Each song was a battle against the darkness, a desperate attempt to prove that his voice could matter in a world that seemed determined to ignore him. His parents knew about the singing, but had no idea about the exhausting double life their son was living. By day, he was the dutiful student pursuing a respectable career. By night, he was a dreamer chasing an impossible fantasy. The strain was enormous, but Andrea pushed through, driven by a voice in his head that whispered he was destined for something greater. Then came 1987, and everything changed. In one of those dimly lit bars, a young woman named Enrica Senzati heard him sing and felt her world shift. She was just 17, he was 29, but the connection was immediate and electric. For the first time, Andrea's music had touched someone's heart completely. That moment would lead to love, marriage, and eventually, heartbreak that would inspire some of his most haunting performances. The discovery that would launch his global career was still years away. But in those piano bars, surrounded by indifferent crowds and cigarette smoke, the voice that would move millions was slowly finding its power. When Andrea Bocelli married Enrica Senzati in 1992, they were just two young people in love, building a life in the Tuscan countryside. She had fallen for the struggling pianist she met in that smoky bar, not the global superstar he would become. Their wedding was simple, intimate, filled with hope for a future they couldn't imagine. Within 3 years, they welcomed their first son, Amos, followed by Matteo in 1997. The Bocelli household was chaos and joy. Toys scattered across ancient floors, children's laughter echoing through rooms where Andrea practiced his scales. But success has a price that nobody warned you about. As Andrea's voice began reaching wider audiences, the demands on his time became relentless. The man who once hurried home from piano bars to kiss his sleeping children goodnight was now gone for weeks at a time, touring across continents. Enrica found herself raising 2 young boys essentially alone, watching her husband transform from the intimate musician she married into a distant figure who belonged more to the world than to his family. The breaking point came gradually, then all at once. Dinner tables grew quieter, conversations shorter, physical presence rarer. Andrea would call from hotel rooms in distant cities, his voice filled with exhaustion and longing, trying to maintain connection with sons who were growing up without him. Enrica, once his biggest supporter, began to feel like a widow married to a ghost. By 2002, after 10 years of marriage, the inevitable happened. Their divorce was handled with dignity and discretion. No tabloid scandals or bitter custody battles. But behind the civilized facade was profound sadness. Andrea had achieved everything he dreamed of professionally, yet lost the intimacy that had sustained him through his darkest years. The man who could move millions to tears with his voice had somehow lost the ability to save his own marriage. In 2002, at a dinner party in Italy, 44-year-old Andrea Bocelli met 18-year-old Veronica Berti. The age gap was massive, the timing complicated by his recent divorce, and the optics potentially career-destroying. Yet Andrea would later describe it as love at first sight, a connection so immediate and powerful that conventional concerns simply evaporated. What followed was one of the most unconventional romances in entertainment history. Critics were brutal. How could the world's most beloved tenor, a man whose voice represented purity and devotion, begin a relationship with someone young enough to be his daughter? The Italian press had a field day, questioning whether this was genuine love or a midlife crisis played out in public. Some fans felt betrayed, as if their hero had fallen from grace. But Veronica wasn't the naive young woman critics portrayed her as. She was intelligent, sophisticated, and completely unbothered by the judgment surrounding their relationship. More importantly, she understood the unique challenges of loving someone whose voice belonged to the world. Unlike his first marriage, which crumbled under fame's pressure, this relationship seemed to thrive on it. For over a decade they lived together without marrying, a choice that raised even more eyebrows in conservative Italy. Their commitment wasn't validated by legal documents, but by daily choices. Veronica managing his tours, supporting his career, creating a stable home base while he traveled the globe. When their daughter Virginia was born in 2012, it felt like the ultimate confirmation that their unusual love story was genuine. Their eventual wedding in 2014 was held at the Sanctuary of Montenero in Livorno, an intimate ceremony that felt more like a celebration of an existing bond than the beginning of a new one. By then, critics had mostly silenced themselves, realizing that whatever unconventional form this relationship took, it was clearly built on something real and lasting. What made their union even more remarkable was how Veronica embraced not just Andrea, but his entire complex legacy, including his children from his first marriage and the demands of a career that never slowed down. At 66, Andrea Bocelli has transformed his success into an empire that stretches far beyond music, creating a legacy that will outlive his voice. His primary residence, Villa San Bastiano in Forte dei Marmi, overlooks the Tuscan coast where he grew up, a three-story masterpiece where the sound of waves mingles with piano rehearsals drifting through open windows. This isn't just a home. It's a creative sanctuary where some of his most memorable performances have been conceived. The Bocelli family's business interests reflect their deep connection to Tuscan soil. Bocelli wines, produced from the same hills where Andrea played as a child, have become prestigious bottles sought after by collectors worldwide. Each vintage tells a story, connecting the terroir of his childhood to the global appreciation for his artistry. The family farmhouse has been converted into a luxury retreat, allowing fans to literally walk in the footsteps of their idol while experiencing the landscape that shaped his voice. But perhaps most importantly, Andrea has built something that transcends material wealth. The Andrea Bocelli Foundation channels his success into meaningful change, funding education programs, healthcare initiatives, and disaster relief efforts across the globe. From Haiti to Italy, the foundation transforms applause into action, standing ovations into opportunities for those who need them most. His approach to legacy planning has been unusually transparent, publicly encouraging supporters to consider bequests that will keep this charitable work alive long after his final curtain call. This isn't just about preserving memory. It's about ensuring that his voice continues to create positive change, even when it can no longer sing. The recent health crisis has only intensified his focus on permanence over performance. As someone who has spent decades understanding the fragility of the human voice, Andrea has always known that physical gifts are temporary. What he's built around that voice, the foundation, the business empire, the family legacy, represents his true masterpiece. At an age when most performers begin considering retirement, Andrea continues to book international tours and record new albums, but now with the wisdom of someone who has stared directly into the possibility of silence and emerged with renewed purpose. Today, as Andrea Bocelli approaches his 67th birthday, the voice that almost disappeared in 2023 continues to defy expectations. The devious virus that silenced him has been conquered, but it left him with a deeper understanding of how precious and fragile his gift truly is. His recent performances carry a new intensity, as if he's singing not just for the audience in front of him, but for the silence that nearly claimed him. His calendar remains remarkably full for someone who faced a career-ending health crisis just months ago. The 2025 season includes the 20th anniversary celebration of Teatro del Silenzio, his annual concert in the Tuscan Hills, where his journey began. International tours across Europe and North America are planned, each performance now carrying the weight of near loss and grateful resurrection. As he looks toward the future, Andrea Bocelli represents something unique in entertainment, an artist whose greatest performances might still be ahead of him, not despite his age and health challenges, but because of them. The voice that emerged from childhood blindness, survived career struggles and personal heartbreak, weathered global controversy, and conquered a potentially career-ending illness now sings with the authority of someone who has truly lived every note. At 66, Andrea Bocelli isn't just surviving. He's proving that true artistry deepens with adversity, and that the most powerful voices are those that have learned to sing through silence itself.